What's up, everybody? It is Izzy back today with the next installment of Q&A. On this intro slide, what we have here, though, is a direct practical example from the literature of regional hypertrophy. What is regional hypertrophy? Regional hypertrophy is a concept where certain exercises will grow parts of the muscle more than another. So, for example, this study looked at squats and leg extensions, and squats grew the vastus lateralis in the middle quite a bit, and it also grew it at the proximal end, but leg extensions caused a ton of growth distally, and squats produced almost no hypertrophy distally. So keep in mind, it's a good idea to have different variations because of regional hypertrophy.
If the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it, but I see a lot of people using discipline is the only thing that matters, motivation doesn't matter, as an excuse to have a bad attitude. Yes, it's important to be able to make yourself do things when you don't feel like doing them, but your whole life shouldn't be like gritting your teeth with grim determination to make you do things you don't want to do. I mean, I'll focus on lifting because that's my thing, but remember, it wasn't even that long ago because of COVID that people had to go to like the local park and do pull-ups on the playground. We're lucky to be able to do this. I have friends right now with a torn pec, ruptured quad tendon, that would love to be able to switch places with these people that don't want to do leg day and get a leg day in. I mean, you're in control of your mood to a large degree. You can discipline your inner space as well. By the time I get to the gym, I've already listened to an hour straight of my favorite music, motivational tapes, or whatever else I'm in the mood for that day. It's not an accident to be in a good mood and to be enthusiastic. That's something you have control over.
Did you ever take an interest in strongman throughout your lifting career? Not in personally doing it. I kind of think it's an injury waiting to happen, and I'm way too short to be good at it anyway. However, in terms of watching it, absolutely. I think strongman's probably the most entertaining strength and physique sport. Definitely more watchable than powerlifting, bodybuilding, and Olympic lifting for me. The athletes involved in the sport are just next level. I mean, those guys are the strongest, and gals are the strongest in the world, period, no doubt. So yeah, I mean, I find it an entertaining sport. Thoughts on deficit deadlifts? I really don't know what the actual question is here. These thoughts on questions, they just kind of like expect me to rant and maybe like do a Wikipedia entry. The deficit deadlift is an exercise where you stand on a plate or a mat and do a normal deadlift. I mean, I don't know what you're asking. I mean, they're a good secondary deadlift option. It depends on the lifter's strengths and weaknesses. I don't think you necessarily have to be weak off the floor to get carryover. It's an extended range of motion pull, so they tend to help everybody because even if you have an excess of strength off the floor, if you get even stronger, you can kind of use that momentum to carry you into your sticking point and potentially block out a little bit more weight. For powerlifting clients, do you program accessories with high intensity approach? No, I do not. Failure training is not appropriate for any sport with a technical aspect. And the reason for that is because the central fatigue that is accumulated from doing failure training, even on accessories like a tricep pushdown, is going to interfere with the total volume and the absolute frequency that you can successfully use. And total volume and absolute frequency are very important in technical sports because they help determine the rate at which you acquire skill in the movement and technique, actually get good at it. And then the other thing is that your absolute frequency and a number of exposures to a lift will determine your rate of neurological adaptation as well. So you really can't afford to accept the stimulus to fatigue ratio if your sport has a technique aspect to it that comes with doing failure training on your tricep pushdowns, on your laterals, on your curls, and all these movements that aren't real competition lifts. Is Telmisartan a must in every cycle? So for those of you who are not enhanced and do not know, Telmisartan is a blood pressure medication, largely anyway. You take it to lower your blood pressure, so you really shouldn't be guessing your blood pressure. You could get a home blood pressure monitor kit off Amazon for anywhere from like $50 to $100 and actually measure your blood pressure to see whether you or not you need blood pressure medication. And since I know I'm going to get asked this, why am I doing assisted pull-ups with added weight? It's because I'm basically doing a Smith machine pull-up. The bar under my feet keeps me stable and in a straight path. Also, it gives me a little bit more choice with the weight than the increments on the machine. What is your favorite part of the chicken? Well, if we're talking about for bodybuilding purposes, I only eat breast tenderloins, which is basically just a chicken breast with the fat trimmed off. It has 25 grams of protein and a half of gram of fat per 100 grams or per 4 ounces. So it's pretty much the leanest, readily available type of meat that you can get. And as for taste, if we're talking something like fried, I like the wings over the drumsticks personally. Muscles fatigue in the shortened position first, so we should do them earlier in the session. But wouldn't that mean doing something like leg extension before squats and causing pre-fatigue? Yes, but that's kind of why it's just a general rule of thumb to train short bias movements earlier in the session and not some immutable law that you must follow no matter what. I mean, even in this set you're seeing me do here, I'm doing the hammer strength pullover, which is extremely short biased, and it's because I'm prioritizing my back compounds ahead of a lat isolation move. So you still have to take other things into account. And as far as the quads specifically, things like hack squats and leg press, in my experience, don't really fatigue the quads in the shortened position. They're super, super easy as joints stack. I mean, you could probably quarter squat, 100% more than you can full squat, at least. I have no idea what people could quarter squat if they actually properly train for it, but it's a huge, huge difference. Leg extensions are pretty similar. If you're doing a short bias leg extension, you probably won't be able to use much less weight if you do it last versus first. I am currently only doing rows and deadlifts for traps. Is that enough? What other trap movements do you recommend? I don't do any direct trap work personally. I do rows, deadlift variations, overhead press variations, full range of motion laterals and upright rows, face pulls, etc. However, if you do want to train your traps directly, the best bang for your buck exercise is tried and true, but it's just pick your favorite version of shrugs. I don't really like barbell shrugs. I find them annoying and kind of hit myself in the nuts, but any shrug will work. Do you think conventional has significant carryover to sumo if your weakness is off the ground? I think conventional always has significant carryover to sumo because it's essentially an extended range of motion deadlift. And deadlifts are always going to have a lot of carryover to each other, especially when you're doing the one that has a longer range of motion. So it's going to increase your general strength base. It's going to be better for hypertrophy. And because of that, it's almost always going to have some carryover. However, if you're a super upright deadlift bar sumo puller, you need to strengthen your quads, and there's better choices for that. Are there accessories to correct hip shift during squats? It depends on why you have hip shift. This could be an injury, it could be a mobility deficit, there could be some sort of neurological dysfunction. But if you just have a simple left to right muscular imbalance where there's muscles on the right side that are stronger than the left side or vice versa, it's possible that some basic unilateral work could fix this. So something like unilateral leg press or split squats or lunges. But ideally something where only one leg at a time is working so that you can really focus on the weaker leg and bring that up to speed. However, if you've got something more complicated going on, I'd highly recommend that you speak to a professional, like a PT who has experience working with lifters, because otherwise you're probably just going to end up guessing and not guessing correctly. How much protein do we actually need? I saw some information saying 0.6 to 0.7 grams per pound. Honestly, I don't really care to try to eat the smallest amount of protein that I can. But a very, very safe recommendation that I have 99% plus confidence in is 0.8 grams per pound in a surplus and 1 gram per pound in a deficit. Thoughts on pork tenderloin? It's a good source of protein and only 3 grams of fat per 100 grams. Why don't bodybuilders eat more pork? Mostly because they don't like it or they just have never eaten it before. There's not always a good reason for why bodybuilders do what they do. Deload questions. Any difference in deloading between a sedentary job and a labor one? In my opinion, no. Can we deload upper and lower body on different weeks? You could, but it won't work as well because you'll still dump local fatigue in the muscles, tendons, and joints, etc. But you'll be building systemic fatigue by training one half of your body while the other half rests. So if you're deloading bench press, but you're still deadlifting and squatting, there's still going to be systemic fatigue accumulating there. Recovery is good, but I'm stalled on movements. Should I deload and lower the volume next? If you're stalled, what does good recovery mean then? If you're regressing and building a lot of aches and pains and lowered motivation, yes, deloading is an option. But you don't necessarily have to lower the volume in the future. I mean, if you got 8 weeks of productive training before needing a deload, that's solid.
A lot of that messaging, I think, is aimed at the general public who's trying to make themselves do something that they don't want to do from ground zero. Which, to me, it's weird, but I always have to remember that there's certain people that legitimately don't like the gym, at all, ever. It's never a fun time for them. It's never something that they want to do. They're not there to set PRs and train hard or whatever. They're there because they want to lose weight, and that's literally it. They're there because they want to feel healthy and lose fat, and they don't like any part of it. So that's who that messaging is aimed at. It really shouldn't be aimed at people where this is their hobby. I mean, a hobby should mostly be fun most of the time. Now, you're not going to love every single aspect of it, of course, but if you don't love or like some of it, why are you doing it? Life's so short, man. I mean, most people probably spend 50 hours a week working and commuting to their job. So if you're going to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week for an hour and then commute to that too, Now you're looking at what, like 7 to 8 hours of gym that you don't like. Now you got to add all your weekly chores. It's probably 10 plus hours. Really quickly, you're at like 70 hours of shit you don't even like. There's literally 3 of you that did this within 5 minutes of each other. You're all very funny, very creative, very unique. I will see you on the stand-up comedy stage Sunday, my friends, to laugh at your funny jokes. No, I honestly don't really give a fuck if I ever win a pro card. That's not what it's about for me. I mean, there's situations where I could win a pro card and it wouldn't be meeting my goals at all. So my goal is to satisfy my own curiosity as to what's possible, how big can I get, how strong can I get if I give this my all, 100%. On the enhanced side, because I feel like I have a grasp of what that answer to that question was naturally. If I won a pro card really easily and it didn't take a lot of effort and it didn't require me to become a better version of myself, that wouldn't satisfy my curiosity. So I want to satisfy that curiosity and in the process live up to my own standards for work ethic, to set an example for others that pay attention to what I do. Those are my motivations. If I get a pro card, cool. I mean, I'll certainly compete for one because that's the objective goal, but it's not my inner goal. No. The peaking process for most sports is relatively similar in concept. And really it works like this. You're trying to bring somebody into a contest with an unsustainably high peak in underlying fitness qualities while having their fatigue be extremely low and as close to zero as possible to allow them to demonstrate fitness at the highest level possible. So you're basically trying to get them to have a one-off performance that is as good as possible. Bodybuilding is unique because it's really the only sport that I can think of where the stuff you do to prepare for it is completely irrelevant to the actual sport. Like you lift weights and do cardio to get ready for bodybuilding, but then when you get on a bodybuilding contest, you're posing in your underwear, right? So it's a visual peak. It's all about being lean and not carrying excess body water. Bodybuilders, if asked to perform in their stage condition, might hurt themselves or freaking die. So very different in that respect. I think you can pass as Mike Israetel if you shave. Jactitude and intelligence is up there, you know? Also cadence. The only problem with that idea is that if I don't shave my head as well, I will look like a girl without facial hair. And that is not my favorite look personally. So the beard stays for now. Thank you very much. Or, get this crazy idea I know. You could just go to the squat rack and do squats. Because they already invented an exercise where you can go ATG without a dead stop. And you wouldn't need a platform to create a deficit, a trap bar, and you may or may not need squat wedges. Just squat. Why would you go through all the trouble of that? Why doesn't Jordan Peters have a pro card? He's huge. Yes, he is huge, but the problem is that bodybuilding is a physique sport, and unfortunately by getting to that size at 5'6", over 300 pounds, he really blew out his waist, and it's hard to win a bodybuilding contest with a big waist. How many sets per muscle group is required per week for optimum muscle growth? Between 1 and a lot more, my friend Trevor says. And yeah, this is a really good illustration here because Trevor sometimes does 15 to 20 sets of biceps per week. I do 2. And we both make good progress. So learning your own individual needs is important if you ever want to go beyond intermediate level. This is going to sound so weird from somebody who's talking about wanting to compete in bodybuilding, but I don't find bodybuilding physiques aesthetic. I don't like how they look. It's not even about that for me. I really don't care about trying to make myself look a certain way to the point that I think it's like attractive or beautiful or good looking in any way. I don't think bodybuilding physiques look good. I mean, Flex Wheeler, Arnold Classic 93, that kind of a look. Sure, I thought that was aesthetic, but overall, I don't think Ronnie Coleman looks good. I think it's cool that he pushed to the levels of extremeness that he pushed to. And that's what I want to experience more so than a specific look. Because again, I don't actually think that looks good. If we're talking about what my ideal physique aesthetic would be, instead of a DBZ character, it's probably Baki. This picture right here would be a good example of my ideal aesthetic. This is going to be really hard to believe and even harder to take, but I don't agree with everything Mike Israetel says. You're never going to have to worry about that. Never. It's exclusively in the realms of the enhanced people pushing 300 plus pounds and competitive pro size.